PC gaming is slowly destroying itself. Man, I feel like it kind of is. I ain't gonna lie. It kind of is.
Do you remember when the GTX 1080 Ti dropped?
Yeah,
It was
wanted one so
amazing
bad.
for its value and its performance.
Never
The
got one,
greatest
though.
card that NVIDIA's ever made, and we've regularly said it's a mistake that they probably won't make again.
It just stunned everyone, but it wasn't even just that card. GTX 1070, 1060, all great cards. AMD was even making an RX 580 and 480 around this
I
time.
had the
Great
RX
value cards.
I had the RX 580.
Still top the charts for AMD, at least on the Steam hardware survey. These cards were great. CPUs were also accelerating at a rapid pace, but nowadays you'd be lucky to get any decent generation of anything on PC. Unless you're talking about AI.
AI era. AI is AI company. AI PC.
That's been progressing very quickly. We're actually getting decent improvements generation on generation. The RTX 4090 is...
I went from the fucking 580 to the 7900 XTX. I just jumped straight to that. Cause, like, I wait a long time before I upgrade. I wait till my shit can barely run games anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Is pretty amazing.
And even then, that thing can probably still run games.
Amazing. Every 40 series card is actually pretty amazing performance and a feat of engineering, but the price of their cards have been pretty ridiculous. That's the thing with the upcoming RTX 50 series of GPUs. They look really, really good too. The RTX 5090, some more leaks have been coming out. It just seems like this card is going to be a monster if these things are true.
People are going to buy it. I know that for sure. It's the price of a used car. Like, literally. It's the same price as a used car. Like, I don't think people should buy it. I know it's going to be for the people who have money. That's literally their NVIDIA's brand is for the people with money. Like, they don't make budget cards. They want people who have the most money to buy these cards.
But with all that's been,
like, I'll wait till this one, like the 4090 price might drop, but it's probably not going to drop for a long time. The 4090 is still an amazing card. Like, I don't even think there's necessarily need to come out with the 5090. They're just doing it just cuz. I mean,
going on, I don't think this card is going to be cheaper than a 4090. I don't think an RTX 5080 is going to be cheaper than a 4080. Might be the same price. And a lot of price points below like $500 or so.
Yeah, the 5080 might be the same price as the 4090.
AMD does offer probably the best value GPUs that are there, but it's not super exciting or riveting where it's like, oh, I have to buy this AMD GPU or else I'm missing out on a great deal. And on the CPU side of things, it really is not that much better. AMD, for example, their Zen 5 Ryzen 9000 series CPUs just recently launched. We've seen like a 2% uplift in performance.
Yeah, and the Ryzen 7 7800 X3D is the best CPU on the market. You don't need the 970 or 7700X. Like, it's just get the 7800 X3D if you want a game. That's all you need.
And now there's things coming out that AMD is saying that in certain cases, if you unlock a new mode on it, the CPU can draw more power. That in certain scenarios, the CPU could be 10% faster. Whoa. A normal generational uplift is 10%, and we're just clamoring to get that 10%. We really need it. So AMD's latest generation really hasn't been that exciting. Even Ryzen 7000 series, though it is decent now, was really, really overpriced at launch, or really hard to get into that platform. Now on the Intel side of things, it's honestly a lot worse. For like over 6 years, Intel was just basically making Skylake their same CPUs over and over again. Until finally they did switch up, but as of the most modern Intel CPUs, they're just blasting power on them to get their performance up as much as they possibly can. And to that point, Intel is basically just killing their own CPUs. They're frying themselves over time because they got so much power heading into them. It's a mess. Then you add up all of this hardware stuff that's just not that exciting. Games are still getting more and more demanding, but our hardware hasn't been progressing nearly at the same rate. So what we're seeing is really terrible performance in games.
I think they need to do Crossfire again. I mean, I don't know how you're going to fit it into a case To be honest, these cards are so big, but they need to figure out how to put 2 of them in a fucking case. And you need bigger power supplies.
Even from some
2 of them in a fucking case. I mean, like, figure it out, optimize it, because these games. I mean, if the technology can't keep up with the games, then they're just gonna have to optimize the games to work for the technology, or they're gonna have to let you just crossfire them shits, you know, SLI.
of the latest GPUs and CPUs that are out there. It's
But then it'll
ridiculous.
probably create a huge bottleneck for the CPU. I don't know. Like I'm not like a fucking like some professional. You know what I'm saying? I built my own PC, but like I don't know as much as some of these people.
How much sometimes you gotta pay just to get a decent experience on some of the newer games. So these chip makers have been making shortcuts to make games easier to run, like upscaling, DLSS, FSR, XeSS, as well as we're making frame generation to.
It's a patch. It's like it's a quick fix patch for a problem that they can't figure out. Pretty much, that's all it is. And I don't think that shit is the future of gaming either. Like it doesn't work that well, and people don't want that.
Kind of double the
I mean, it's nice if you're playing an adventure game, but if you're playing competitive games, you don't want that.
performance in our games, at least visibly. Though there are very good technologies, these are just shortcutting, making games a lot easier to run than they really should be. I think it's kind of hilarious. This hurts my soul a little bit,
It is
how it's
kinda hilarious.
infested shortcuts to making games easier to run. This is Monster Hunter Wilds, a new game that's coming out in February of 2025. Very exciting game. So as far as I can tell, if you have a decent GPU, all pretty fast mid-range graphics cards that are at least
Yeah,
$300, you're playing, from what I can tell here, 30 FPS at 1080p. And I think this is medium settings with frame generation enabled to get you to 60 FPS, which just feels awful to.
You need a high-end GPU if you want to play like high frame rates with good graphical fidelity. That's just what it is. You need the best you can get.
Play, because the game doesn't actually run faster. It's still really laggy. Doesn't look good either when there's so many frames being generated that aren't actually made by the game itself. So it looks bad, feels bad to play. It's getting so bad that developers are putting this as recommended spec to have 30 FPS frame generation. Then when you go to the minimum specs of this game, they say 30 FPS. Okay? This is 1080p upscaled.
I don't think he meant the first time to say 30. It's 60, but yeah, we all know what he was talking
With
about.
whatever upscaler that you can use. Devs are having to use these features just to get games to run because our hardware isn't really progressing, or games are progressing way faster than our hardware is. And these crazy system requirement specs, or really anything I've experienced it myself, these aren't you.
I like running. I like playing on 1440p, but I mean, honestly, I think people are gonna have to sacrifice. People don't want to sacrifice their high resolution monitors at all, but I mean, I think that's what they want people to still play on 1080p for gaming. And don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but once you make the upgrade to the next like resolution, like you can tell a fucking huge difference.
Unique
tell a huge
to
difference.
just
I can't ever
Monster
go back
Hunter
to 1080p.
Wilds. This is basically every new game that's coming out, at least AAA games, unless they're like a PS4 port or something like that. It's even got to the point with hardware just being mediocre that consoles that usually have really good value for the price are struggling to get decent performance in
That game looks
games.
like ass.
PlayStation 5 is getting like 30 FPS at all times, upscaling from like 720p in a lot of games. Really bad. And the
it's really
PS5
bad.
Pro, and it kind of looks decent. It's getting improved upscaling, which is a good thing. We like improved upscaling. It's good. They didn't even upgrade the CPU, maybe because it costs too much. I'm not exactly sure. But the GPU is a little bit faster, and that should lead to better performance in games. The thing with consoles is they're supposed to be like affordable, but even consoles are still getting that treatment where they're getting more expensive and you're getting less for your money. The PS5 Pro is like $700.
It's just it's a cat and mouse game with having to get these new AAA games out. I mean, trying to play them on these new devices. I think they need to slow down a little bit. To be honest, I think that's just what it is. I feel like game developers should try to do more tricks, and like on like graphics and fidelity and rendering and shit like that. There's ways to render the games without having everything loaded up at once. I mean, maybe Unreal Engine can help with that. You know what I'm saying? I know Unreal Engine really does help a lot with keep making games run well. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes.
And they price gouge you to $800 if you want a freaking disc drive. I'm sorry, console players, but you're finally experiencing what we've been experiencing on PC for quite a while. The narrative that's been going around is that Moore's Law is dead.
Moore's Law is probably currently running at about 2 times.
Moore's Law is dead.
Now, what is Moore's Law? Every 2 years, the transistors, or the little switches that are in our CPUs, our GPUs, basically more transistors in a thing usually makes it more efficient and faster. That every 2 years, our transistor count is supposed to double, and the price for these transistors, as the whole chip, is supposed to be cut in half, which is basically exponential growth for transistors. Basically, the narrative that's going around right now is that this law is dead. But is this really true? Is this the reason our hardware isn't nearly as exciting now?
I think they're just charging more. I think they just want to get more money out of you to get a little bit better performance. Like, I would wait probably a couple of generations before buying anything
nowadays, because are these companies
like, I would say get a 4090 or 7900 XTX and chill at that. I chill at that for a while. I wouldn't get anything new next gen.
Actually just getting greedy now? Is that why Moore's Law is dead, so that they can sell us underwhelming parts for a higher price because they can't keep up with this law? I mean, like, why does an RTX 4080 now cost $1,200 when a 3080 costed $700? It sounds like a simple request and a very easy one, but obviously it is more complicated for these companies to do. So I want to ask the question, why are we in this situation that our hardware is slowing down? This is just one aspect. That is because the advancements in chip technology and processing and fabrication of these things, its advancement is slowing down. And that is basically the Moore's Law is dead thing. Unless you got a really steady hand or you're on Adderall or something, I don't think you're going to be making these chips. We are getting closer and closer to the limits of physics. And the machines that we have making them now.
That's exactly it. We're getting close to the limits of physics. Literally. I don't think we can do any better technological wise to make things faster. Like, unless you add more computing, like 2 cards, 2 CPUs on a motherboard. Like, I don't know. Figure it the fuck out. I think that's the only way to do it. I don't think you can do it off of 1 chip. Or just get a Threadripper, you know?
Nowadays, I mean, they're getting down to like 3 nanometer. And this is really important because of, obviously, if the technology doesn't keep improving, then we can't make more efficient and more powerful chips. And if we look on AMD's RDNA 4 7000 series generation, their top end chip is the 7900 XTX, 58 billion.
I think that's why I think that's why, though, they're charging so much, because they know people don't need these new cards. So if you're gonna buy one, if you have the money, they're gonna make the money there. You know, people who they know if they sell them for cheap, people are just gonna get them and not be happy about it.
Billion transistors. Now we look at their previous generation, RDNA 2, and you can see that this guy only had 27 billion transistors. So the 7900 XTX has over twice the amount of transistors in it. That is in a 2-year period. So the latest generation from NVIDIA is the RTX 4090. This is Ada Lovelace 40 series graphics cards. Okay, 76 billion transistors. I know it says million, but that's 76 billion transistors on it. Die area itself is 609 millimeters squared. We can go to the RTX 3090, and this guy had 28 billion transistors. It's kind of nuts that there's almost 3 times the transistors, the 4090 compared to the RTX 3090. Huge uplift, and you can see by the performance of the 3090 versus the 4090, yeah, this card is a lot faster. So you can see where transistors really make a difference here. The 2080 Ti was about 19 billion transistors compared to the RTX 3090 that had 28 billion transistors. Here's a 2080 Ti, the GOAT, 12 billion transistors on it, and these are relatively similar sized dies. The 2080 Ti is a little bit smaller than these other ones compared to NVIDIA 20 series that had 19 billion transistors.
I think they just make bigger dies. I think that's just what it is. Bigger dies.
You can see the die is actually just larger here. 1080 Ti is just significantly smaller here. So you can see that this guy had 24.7 million transistors per millimeter squared. That had 25.1 million transistors per millimeter squared. So you can see between these chips, actually, the 1080 Ti was more transistor dense. They're not really getting a large amount more transistors to this day for the die area. The density is what matters here. And this is kind of that Moore's law is dead thing. Our transistor count isn't really increasing at a huge amount, or if it does increase by a huge amount, the price of the card or whatever is still getting very expensive that it ends up really not being that insane of a difference. Why this is happening, it's getting insanely more and more complicated in order to make these things, because you can just see 4090 here is on TSMC 5 nanometer. They're now on 3 nanometers, so it could get better. 7900 XTX is also on 5 nanometer here. It's like these are very tight, and we're starting to get to that point where, hey, it's getting really hard to manufacture these guys and actually making significant advancements for these processes. And if we start to get even lower than this, then we could run into even more problems. I'm getting this from Reddit. It's Reddit, you know, the most knowledgeable people on earth here. We can't get smaller than 1 nanometer because quantum tunneling would say hello. Which is basically, we get to a point, electrons themselves in the atoms are going through quantum leaps, and we just can't make a decent process. We can't control it anymore, or the yields would probably be atrocious. Or maybe there's ways that we could get it to work, but it seems like it's going to get very...
So quantum computing is just the future. That's basically what they're saying. And let alone let it run a game. Until they have home quantum computers, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to get any better.
Very difficult and possibly a ton more expensive at that point. Then if it gets more expensive, then Moore's law is dead. I mean, what do I know though? I'm not a chip engineer. I don't work at TSMC or Intel or something like that. I don't know. I'm just looking at it from here and it's like, I don't know what we're going to do when we get to that point. How do we progress further? Where does computing go once we get there? If you do think about it though, there's always a point in every market sector. Like, are we really reinventing?
Not realistic, but, you know, that's the direction it's probably heading. If you wanted more computing power, quantum computers are probably going to be the only way to do it. I think we're reaching a climax, a peak. You know what I'm saying?
The hammer anymore? Are we reinventing
we're hitting a finite curve, you know? Hitting it. Hit the top.
Shovel anymore?
Not gonna get
Eventually we get to the point where these products really can't advance anymore. And we've seen insane advancements in computing and semiconductor technology over the years that it'd be like unprecedented to not have insane advancement. But we might just be getting to that point where how do we actually make these products better? Maybe how we could get them to perform better is instead of just using these general processors all the time, instead moving towards more and more hardware accelerated for certain tasks on your computer, then we could end up getting faster things in the future, because that takes a lot more development time and software and all that, and also dedicated hardware. Now another thing is the game getting very demanding, and the hardware that we have just cannot keep up with that. Could be an aspect of the industry that games are actually progressing way too quickly and asking it way more from our hardware, no matter how many software tricks and frame generations. And
that's what I said. I think they just need to chill the fuck out. I need to slow down. Like, nothing needs to look better than Cyberpunk. You know what I mean? Again, nothing needs to look better than Black Myth Wukong. You know what I'm saying? Like, currently, it just does not need to look better than that. I think, like, once you get a game that looks as good as these games, that's it. You don't need anything better, you know? Not for a while, at least.
Upscaling that we use, no hardware would ever have kept up anyways. Although there is like a complete side of this is...
My computer ran this game just fine. I mean, I don't know how much frames per second I was getting, but, like, I didn't care to check, but my game, it ran it good.
These games that are so demanding, usually they're very demanding because they look hyper realistic. They look photo.
That's why I said you just need to get top of the end GPUs if you want to run these games at high graphic settings. Like, you just got to turn down the graphics. That's just the reality of it.
Oh, realistic, some would say. Games can only look so photorealistic. At some point, it's real life, or it's to the point where the diminishing returns of making a photorealistic game, the budget would just be insane out of control. Maybe people don't even want photorealistic games. So this is kind of a mute point in some aspect. I mean, in my opinion, Overwatch is literally one of the best games, best looking games, not best games, definitely not one of the best games.
That's another thing. The developers going for photorealism is like, it's something nobody even asked for. You know, it's cool. It's cool to look at and it's nice. But like, I think stylized art and graphics is definitely like the direction we should head towards, because I think they're way more immersive. Like, you can make a game with stylized graphics look amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, take Breath of the Wild, for instance. If that was actually running on good hardware, that game would look fucking beautiful. And it already looked good on a fucking Switch. So I could only imagine. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I think stylized graphics is definitely the way to go for these game developers. I don't think they need to go shoot for hyper-realism, unless you're like Call of Duty or something like that. But like, I just don't think so.
Best looking games to ever release, and it still is to this day. It's timeless in the way that Overwatch looks. It's not a realistic art style, but it can run on a potato. All kinds of different games also look great as well. Minecraft is the most sold game
Minecraft looks amazing
ever. Now this is the third thing why I think a lot of our chips are pretty mediocre nowadays, and it might surprise you because, you know, we're getting second-rate chips, whereas all the companies are selling to their enterprise consumers, and, you know, they're selling their big boy chips like Nvidia. They're selling AI to their big boy businesses and everything. But this might surprise you. All of these processors that we personally use also are on the highest end manufacturing process that is available, you know, for them to be competitive. And you might have noticed when I was flipping through all the GPUs and their transistors and everything earlier, most of them are manufactured by one company, TSMC. And it's because this one company is the most advanced one. Nvidia with 30 series Ampere GPUs, they went with Samsung instead of TSMC. Nvidia had a lot harder time that generation. They had to blast the power. They had to give it everything they got just to compete with AMD on RDNA 2, because AMD used TSMC and were on a better process node than Nvidia. TSMC is just really good, really well respected. For example, Apple makes their M series chips. Those are TSMC. Qualcomm, Snapdragon, they use TSMC for their chips as well. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. The ARC A770, so Intel's GPUs, even though Intel has fabrication of their own,
proprietary
they
technology
actually
though there over in Taiwan. They need to bring that shit back over to America. That's what they need to do. Make that shit fucking here.
use TSMC for their fabrication as well. And
They're
this
the
is
only country in the world that makes chips. Like they make the best chips in the world.
a good and a bad thing. Obviously,
And fucking, goddamn, I forgot it already.
Anyways,
Anyways, they make the
TSMC is
best
ahead
chips in
of the
world.
curve,
They're
so we're
freaking
getting the
brain
best
dead right
products. But also, TSMC has
Taiwan,
said
that's it.
themselves, like here, I don't exactly know where this quote comes from, but have admitted in mid 2023 that the demand for a chip on wafer substrate, whatever, has exceeded production capacity. And the company has vowed to double the capacity by the end of 2024. Basically, they don't have enough manufacturing to keep up with all these companies getting chips from them. That's a problem for multiple reasons. They can charge even more, or really whatever they want
They're
for
charging
these
more.
chips to be made, because really they're the only company on the planet to do it. And another side of this can be really dangerous, because it is just one company, and this one company is based in Taiwan. You know, if something just happened to Taiwan, guess what?
China.
World War III is going to be starting, because the whole world needs chips. That's the only company that can make them. I will say that some other foundries are being built. I'd mentioned earlier that Intel can also do fabrication of their chips. Usually their CPUs are built on their own node. Intel has all of these kind of foundries everywhere in the world, and they're expanding.
Yeah, Intel does a good job. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the world's gonna end if TSMC, whatever, fucking is taken over by China. But like World War III will get started if they try. I already know. Like, it will. The world needs chips. It's a big fucking market. A lot of money. But Intel can't
Even
do
more
it.
into the United States, which is probably good to separate where these things are in the world. And it'll probably lead to the U.S. economy getting better. Hell yeah, freedom, guns, and cheeseburgers. Let's go. And that's also led to Intel possibly getting some deals, say like from Nvidia. Pretty sure right now, Intel at their fabs is actually making some things for Nvidia at the moment. Pretty cool. And this is really only enabled by a recent thing that came out, because you would think Intel can't really do this because Intel isn't like TSMC. TSMC doesn't really care. But Intel obviously also makes graphics cards and CPUs.
Yeah,
Intel
they
has some
just started
issues
that
that they might
recently,
steal technology from companies. Intel is now actually thinking about chunking up their business. They might sell off their foundry business, or at least do a spin-off so the companies aren't really related and that other businesses can trust them more, so they can make some more revenue and actually get bookings. We've also seen things that apply to Intel, TSMC, and Samsung is the United States Chip Act, because the US is actually funding companies to make foundries in the US now.
Yeah.
So more of these fabs from other companies will be out there at some point. But I'm not sure how much it's really gonna help the situation, because these other companies aren't as advanced as
That was
TSMC
one good
is,
thing
and
Joe
we
Biden did.
are gonna be making stuff on the highest process node. So if TSMC doesn't have the manufacturing capabilities, or they're just charging even more, then we're gonna end up getting that cost passed down to us at some point in the future. Now, the fourth reason why I think this is all happening is that companies are prioritizing profits.
Yeah.
I know.
100%.
Crazy, right? A company wanting to
No
make
doubt about
money
that.
or having to make money from their investors. That's huge, because when chips aren't that exciting and people don't really want to buy them, well, these companies need to charge more for the chips that are selling so that they can make more revenue. They need to
Yeah.
make more revenue year over year. This kind of relates back to that fab capacity stuff, because TSMC can only make so many chips, and these companies are prioritizing profit. You see
Yeah.
where we're going here? So the chips that they are selling, these companies are going to be prioritizing the ones that make them the most money.
Makes
Nvidia,
sense,
for
yeah.
example, well, they're going to make chips for their business, their enterprise. AMD, Intel, they're all mostly going to be prioritizing their enterprise customers in order to make the most money possible. These companies have realized just how much money there is in the business side of this and not in the consumer side. Because, man, we're cheap. My last reason why I think we're in the situation we're in with PC hardware, the unprecedented amount of inflation that's been going on. I just pull up this
yeah.
thing from inflation
inflation.
calculator from the United States. You
Yeah,
can
the
see
inflation
in
is
2021, our inflation rate was 7%. In 2022 is 6.5%. In 2023 is 3.4%. So it seems to be balancing out. But you can see that these rates are insane for what they have been.
Insane.
It's not like it's going up 20% in a year or something like that, but it's a lot more than it typically is, and that does definitely affect the situation we're in. And higher inflation makes things cost more for the companies and eventually to us in the process. Part of this inflation is caused by the pandemic. I mean, it's in 2021, 2022. What do you
obviously.
think? That's pandemic years. This is kind of an unprecedented scenario that doesn't really happen that often, and we're basically in a mini recession or whatever. This definitely affects the value of the products that we're getting at the end of the day. And again, these companies want to make money. They have literally zero incentive to make their products cheaper and take more of a cut of their profit in order to make affordable products for us. So that gets me to the big question. So we're at this point where GPU hardware, CPU hardware, everything just isn't that exciting. Things, even when they are good, are too expensive to really be reasonable. Can it get better, or will it get better?
I believe
No.
so.
I mean,
No? I think it can get a little better. I don't think anytime soon, though. I think they're always going to charge a lot. That's why people just need to stop buying them. Stop saving up your money and putting yourself in financial debt for these fucking cards, man.
yes, it could get better. I don't think we're going to ever be nearly at the same rate of improvement that we ever were before, because of all the reasons I listed above. I'd be
Like science. Fucking science. That's why.
surprised if we end up exponentially increasing our performance and our transistor count, everything. Now, some things like with price maybe could end up getting a little bit better, because we are seeing all these other companies make foundries, and that means that we're gonna have more competition in the space at some point in time when they can maybe catch up with TSMC, if that's possible. The thing about it though is a lot of these foundries and everything are still years and years off. This isn't gonna be like a thing. It's not gonna happen tomorrow. And this whole situation, I think, it's honestly pretty sad. Over the years, we've seen so much improvement. We've seen generations.
It's not too sad. I think it was just an inevitability of the situation. It was going to happen eventually at this point. But, Just got to deal with it now.
Is it GPUs, CPUs?
I wish we can just keep improving and keeping shit at a low cost, but shit gets harder to do. Prices are going to go up, and when people, there's not enough supply for the demand, yeah, it's going to be an issue.
That we've been genuinely excited for. It's like, what are we going to get next? It's going to be insane performance. Like, oh, the top tier card is going to cost $300 now, basically, from the last generation. It's going to be insane. And I don't think we're ever going to be seeing that type of improvement anymore. I hope, pray to God, that I'm going to be eating my words at some point.
That would be cool if like the new cards got cheaper and they were better. Like, that was like the whole theory of technology. Things will get cheaper and better. It's doing the exact opposite.
I was wrong. Now, if you think I'm completely wrong, go ahead and tell me. I'm not convinced things are really going to get better. They just keep trending to get worse. If every company that's out there is having these issues where things just are slowing down significantly, this seems like a completely industry-wide thing. PC hardware in general kind of sucks right now and has been sucking more and more over the years. I would just say don't upgrade your hardware every generation or every other generation. I'd probably wait 3 to 4 generations before.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was just saying. Wait a little bit. Wait a while
before you upgrade your stuff. That's been it for me. I'm gonna see you.
I've always waited a few generations though to upgrade. I've never did every upgrade generation. I run my shit until I notice a significant difference. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, wait a little bit.
Guys, the next video. Y'all have a good one. Try to. I'm gonna see ya. Peace.
Vex. That was a good video by Vex.